We've got one more race to do here at Sonoma in the LMP2 cars. Let's take a look at how our final qualifying lines up. Jake's going to be on pole position with a 1:24.36. Waleed is only 0.06 of a second behind in P2. Jackson, pretty big drop there with a 24.799, and Cooper just barely not making it out of the 24s. He's in the 25s. It's been a while since we've seen Jake on pole when it comes to the final. Here he comes across the line, cutting the beam, and the race is underway. We're not going to be seeing anything into this first left-hander here because it's flat out, but Jackson seems close. He's going to the inside, but there's not going to be enough room. There goes Waleed. He's been spun out. Waleed is backwards into the gravel. It's going to be a slow recovery from him. There might be a penalty floating around for Jackson now. That was a little bit too aggressive on the overtake. We'll take a look at the replay here in a moment. Jake's pulling away now, but it's still a three-way battle for the lead. He misses the apex through there, maybe going a bit wide, but doing well to keep it on the track. He is going to lose a little bit of time to these two, but he's going to be able to stay ahead through here for sure. Everyone wants to stay as wide as they can through this corner and get the best late apex possible so that they can get a solid exit into this slow corner that comes up next. Cooper's really been struggling with these cars, and he's starting to fall behind these two. Hopefully he can start to figure it out. Look at how close he is. He's definitely got the braking down. He's all over the back of Jackson, just trying to prove me wrong now. That's a huge time gain for Cooper. He stayed right on the back of Jackson. He made sure to brake a lot later than he could, but he is losing time through the S's now. Looks like the car was getting a little bit sideways, and the traction control on these is incredibly invasive. But Jake's gone wide. He's into the dirt now. Jackson shoots past on the inside through the braking. He's going to try and stay wide and maybe get an up and under, but Cooper's going to take advantage of that wide line. He will stay ahead of Cooper, but Jackson now has the lead of the race. They're pretty similarly paced right now. They're all within a second of each other, but this is just the first lap. The track isn't warm yet, nor are the tires, so we'll see those lap times start to drop. There goes Jackson sliding off. Or is this a connection issue? Yes, it is. My apologies. This tournament's been riddled with those. It's not affecting the race standings at all. Everything to the drivers still appears normal, but yeah, that's the main reason that we're moving away from race room. Jackson definitely went wide there. He kicks up a little bit of dust for the cars behind to collect, but he does stay in the lead. Jake is very close now, though. If he can stay close enough through this corner, there's a good chance that he'll be able to nick Jackson in that braking zone. He seems a little bit behind through there. Jake definitely has an opportunity to get at it. Jackson gets the better exit, but Jake will have the slipstream, and that is extremely valuable in these cars. Look at the gap he's closing now. He can brake later, but there won't be a dive just yet. There could always be an up and under. No, it won't be. Jake will stay behind Jackson for now. There's still tons of opportunities for him to regain the lead, not just in this lap, but in the future ones as well. We have one more corner that I can see Jake potentially overtaking Jackson, but Cooper's making time on him now through the S's. This is where he made the mistake last time. Will he be able to keep it on the track? Yes, he will, playing it very safe, but Cooper's going to come around the outside. He's going to brake late, but he's going to go into the back of Jackson. They've both spun now in the final corner. Jake retakes the lead. Jackson's quick to get back on it, but Cooper is not moving. It's almost like he didn't bother to brake at all. Waleed will also overtake him. I'm not sure if that's a hardware issue or if that was just a driver error, but it will give Jake a very comfortable lead over the other drivers. Looking back on his consistency and pace, I'm going to say it's going to be quite difficult for anyone to be able to overtake him now. We'll take a look at the replay, see if it makes it any easier to call. Jackson's kind of already over the white line here. Waleed turns in to hit that apex. I don't know if he sees him or not, but Jackson doesn't really have anywhere to go except for behind. I personally think that's where he should have gone, but let's leave it up to the race director to determine whether or not that's worth a penalty or if that's a racing incident. It's now going to be looking at the deltas to see if anyone has the pace to at least keep up with Jake and match his lap times, or if anyone's going to be able to close the gap. And unless Jake makes a mistake on his own, I don't think that's going to be happening. I think he is going to be able to walk away with first place on this one. It's a shame that he isn't in the building for it, but I'm willing to bet that is how it's going to end up, with Jake crossing the line first. We're going to have to look to see who comes in second, and we're going to have to keep looking at that feed where we get to see the penalties as well to see if there's anything for Jackson, because it's still under investigation. But now we look to see who's setting the pace, and it seems to be Waleed who's setting the fastest times, but that gap might not be small enough for him to take advantage of in time in order to take the lead of the race. No one's really put a lap time in, but Jake will now, and it is a 25.3. That's a little bit off the pace from qualifying and what we've seen from these guys so far, but it is a competitive lap time. That might be why Waleed is gaining. I bet you Waleed has broken into the 24s by now. Jackson's struggling to keep up with the pace, and Cooper is long gone by now. 17 seconds and falling further back. Definitely not been a good race for him so far. It sucks to see, but I don't think he ever really figured out this car. Jake's on a great lap so far. I'm thinking he's going to be able to break into the 24s if he can just keep it together. I was a little bit too early on the apex for me, but it does seem like he's putting a really quick one together. He's made a couple of mistakes going into the final sector, but if he can put it together this time, he'll definitely be in the 24s. And if he can figure it out for the rest of the race, I think he's set. I don't think that anyone is going to be able to challenge him at this point. If he can just keep it on the road in Sector 3. He's using an awful lot of curbs, and these cars, that can be a huge time loss. You can lose steering and you can lose power. So what I think I'd do is I'd stay entirely off the curbs in Sector 3. But Jake keeps it together. He's still on the road. He didn't lose too much time. But yeah, that's a little bit more curb usage than you'd really like. We'll rocket out of the final corner. The amount of torque that these cars have, I believe that they are diesels, so they can really shoot out of any corner at low revs, and it is a 24.6 from Jake. It's not the fastest thing we've seen, but because we've been on board with Jake the whole time, we can see exactly where he can make up that time and just get a little bit quicker. He's still got plenty of time to set fastest laps, and at this point, that's really all that he's going for. He doesn't really have anyone to challenge him for position. If he can just keep it on the track, he's totally fine. He doesn't even have to push full speed anymore. And Jackson has been given a penalty. He's been asked to give Waleed the position before the end of the race. Now, there is a way that he can do this strategically. You can, of course, overtake the car once you let him by. So if he does it somewhere, say, in the exit of a corner... Oh! Waleed does not get the message in time. He did not know that Jackson was slowing down. He has to slam on the brakes, and he spun out mid-corner while Jackson was trying to let him by. He slows down even more. He says, "Hurry! Come on, Cooper's coming. We have to go now." He's pretty much come to a complete stop in order to let Waleed catch up in time. What he's going to do here is he's going to move to the outside. He's going to let Waleed go to the inside. And then once he sees that his car is clear, so right now he's going to get back on it. He's going to try the up and under. It's not going to be anything, but they're back up to racing speed. So now they are allowed to race. Jackson can now overtake Waleed. That is if he has the pace. Waleed pretty much has been setting the pace for the whole race. He's been fighting for that with Jake. But Jackson is nowhere close to that, so he's going to have to stay right on him for as long as he can, but I'm not even sure he can match the pace, much less keep up with it, even in the slipstream. And that mistake has allowed Cooper to also join the fight, so we might not be looking at last place anymore, if he can just keep up with these two. If anything, that's certainly secured first place for Jake. It's a 16-second gap. Even Waleed, who has been setting the pace, is not going to be able to do that with just 4 minutes left. Waleed is also trying to extend that gap from these two, and it is going his way for now. That is getting just slightly bigger, but through this section, Jackson is quite a bit faster than him. Oh, there goes Cooper, way off the track and into the wall. That may have been caused by some dirty air or maybe taking too much curb. These cars do behave pretty strange for that section when it comes to mid-speed cornering, but that will mean Cooper is going to drop out of this fight, I think. He might have to settle for P4 this time out. Waleed is also making a break for it. He's pulling away from Jackson. The gap is still relatively close, and Jackson will want it to stay as close as he can, obviously, just in case Waleed makes a mistake. But what we've seen so far dictates that Waleed is not prone to making a mistake. But the thing is, Jackson is staying close enough to the point where Waleed is going to have to keep pushing pretty much 100% in order to keep him behind. Jackson is definitely overdriving himself. He's gone a little bit wide into the dirt there, but he's kept it on the track for the most part. If Waleed backs off at all, then Jackson might be able to start gaining time. Let's see what kind of lap times Waleed is doing at the moment. He's got a 1:24.7 to beat. If he goes any faster, it will pop up on the screen. It's a 1:24.3, setting some absolute flyers in the later stages of the race, something that I don't think anyone else is going to be able to match. But I wouldn't say that Waleed is in the safe zone yet. There's only 2 minutes left. That should be 1 or 2 more laps. So there isn't a lot of time for things to change at the moment. Waleed certainly isn't losing any time, but ever since Jackson's let him by, he's managed to keep the gap pretty similar. There is a bit of a growth, but by the time the race ends, the gap between Waleed and Jackson will probably only be 1.5, maybe 2 seconds with this pace. It's actually a little bit surprising to see how Jake is now starting to pull away from Waleed. It would seem that he is now setting the pace in some sectors of the track, but that gap has grown just a tiny little bit since I last looked at it between Jake and Waleed. So we've only got about 2.5 laps for these guys to do before the end of the race. This race essentially marks the end of our uses of race room. There's going to be one more race room tournament after this, but it's only going to be for people who have yet to win a tournament. So these guys will not be invited to drive. They will be invited to come and coach some of the guys. Hopefully that will provide some good racing, but this is the last one where anyone can hop in on race room. After that, we're going to be switching to iRacing, which has a better force feedback model and handling model, and just about better in every single way, especially since they're updating the graphics as well. It's going to look a lot better. iRacing certainly needed that, but I'm not entirely sure if we're going to be able to provide coverage on those first few iRacing tournaments yet. Until we get the replay system working properly. But until then, we have one more amateur tournament, is what we're going to be calling it, and 2 laps to decide who's going to be taking home the trophy this time out. So far, it's looking like Waleed has the best chance, and Jake is going to be taking home maximum championship points. But that's Waleed! That's gone off! All the way off the track, super deep! But that will give Jackson P2. I have no idea how that happened to Waleed. If I had to guess, he got on the dirt on his way into the entry, maybe locked up. But that is incredibly deep and not a place that you would usually see a mistake. That's a bizarre mistake to suffer from, and an absolutely atrocious timing for that. There's only going to be 1 lap of racing left, so he has to hope that Jackson also makes another mistake, or else he'll be able to pick up a 7th trophy and extend his lead in our monthly championship. Waleed will want to make it 2 in a row for himself. He won that BMW M1 Pro Car Championship, and it looked like for the longest time that it would be 2 in a row, but it would seem that luck is just not on his side today. He's 2.5 seconds back at this point. If Jackson makes a mistake, he might be able to reclaim it, but there's only 1 more lap to go. Jake has a demanding lead right now, but since he isn't in the building, he's only fighting for championship points, and the timer ticks down to 0. This will be the final lap. Jake is already halfway through it as well, so there's no question that he's going to cross the line first. It's been a great tournament for him. He's at home using his own equipment, so he's very familiar with it and very competitive. But this time out, we are going to be looking at 2nd place, which is currently where Jackson is, but Waleed is gaining. It is not gaining fast enough to be able to fight on track for it. He has to hope and pressure Jackson, but he's too far back to really do anything about it. This will be Jake's 2nd ever win, so he will join Jackson in the multi-win league. It's a little bit of a strange one this time, but it's going to be one to be proud of. He makes his way through the final corner, slingshots out of here. It's flat out for the rest of the lap. 1 more left-hand kink through here as he makes his way onto the grid slots, and the checkered flag waves. Jake cuts the beam and the race is over, and he will be our 2nd ever multi-time winner. We turn now to 2nd place, which has become quite close despite that incident, but it will be Jackson who leads as Waleed gets too greedy on the power, too desperate, and by technicality, with Jake not being in the building, it will be Jackson's 7th trophy. Waleed, with a heartbreaking race, will end up in P3, but he does snag the fastest lap, and Cooper, after such a difficult tournament for him, will pick up P4. That wraps up this one, but we will be back with our 1st ever amateur tournament pretty soon here. So stay tuned for that and don't miss it.